Stuart, you're impossibly fast and strong. Your skin is pale white and ice cold. Your eyes change color, and sometimes you speak like you're from a different time. You never eat or drink anything. You don't go out in the sunlight. How old are you?
17.
How long have you been 17?
A while.
I know what you are.
Say it. Say it out loud.
Genetically predisposed to be homosexual. Travolting presents The Fraser's Edge. Hosted by Jeff Sweeney and Stuart Elmore. Covering the Twilight of the Golds. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to this episode of Travolting presents The Fraser's Edge. Twilight
of the Golds.
And that's right, folks.
Golden Twilight.
If perhaps that intro was not entirely, what's the word?
Lore accurate?
Or respectful, neither of this movie.
Yeah, no.
The tone of our opening, the tone of our intro has the same tone as this motion picture, The Twilight of the Golds, a mid-90s motion picture adaptation of a Broadway play, The Twilight of the Golds by Jonathan Tallis, that deals with the idea of if you knew that your child was going to be born gay, would you abort them? The answer, no. No, of course not.
The answer, according to the play, yes.
What?
Did you hear about this?
No, I did not.
Okay, so the original play, let me look at this. The Twilight of the Gold, the play premiered in 1993. The original ending, we'll get to it later, but the original ending is very...
Oh, yeah, I see this.
And then it was remade for the movie.
Yeah.
We'll get to that later,
Yes.
but we'll talk about the movie's messaging, and then we'll tell you what the play actually had, and then you can make up your own mind as to what the fuck was this playwright thinking.
Yes. This movie, yeah.
Where do we go from here?
We start by saying this stars Brendan Fraser, the subject of this podcast.
Brendan Fraser
is in this movie.
David, Jennifer Beals as a sister Suzanne.
Yes.
Who is more or less the protagonist.
Yes. That is the main problem of this movie.
What?
Is that she is the main character. And we're supposed to feel for her struggle in this movie. But her the struggle she's going through is such an easy answer.
Yeah.
I understand the forces that are working against her, and I'm not opposed to the pressure she's feeling, but at the same time, it's such an in the current climate of today, 2022, it's such an obvious answer.
Right.
No.
But in 1996, evidently it's a very difficult question. It's very complicated.
This is, like we said, this comes out in 1996. And this is kind of the heel turn for Hollywood proper on gay rights as an issue.
Yes. We've talked about this before, I think.
We have.
Yeah.
But in the 80s, gay rights is mostly a joke when it comes to cinema. In terms of Hollywood.
Yeah.
In the independent market, there's a lot of LGBTQ independent artists who are making indie films and really, growing the art form in their communities. But in regards to Hollywood proper, studio blockbusters, and especially comedies, gay people, lesbians, homosexuals, LGBTQ,
they're a stereotype.
They're a joke. It's a stereotype and a joke.
Yeah. Gay men are always flamboyant.
Yes, gay men are flamboyant.
Lesbian women are butch and
men
manly.
being close to each other is always gross.
Yeah.
And so the 90s are when Hollywood starts slowly changing the tide on that. I would say Jonathan Demme can get a lot of credit for that with Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Which comes out, had protests against it, a lot of issues with its release and its Oscars recognition. But that was the first movie that started to break down in the studio market the idea that, gay people are people.
Yeah.
And you can make movies about them and tell compelling stories and tell stories about the prejudice they face in a nuanced way.
And also, it doesn't even have to be so much about the prejudice as it is about, like, their relationships are complex, too, just as much as heteronormative relationships are. Like, we don't have to, like, gay love stories are love stories.
Yes.
They're not
gay love stories.
They're love stories.
Yes.
And so you can just, like, I think that's the thing, we have films today like Moonlight, which it calls some attention to, like, the prejudices, but it's just really about a guy.
Yeah, it's a love story.
Yeah, it's a love story. And so.
Yeah. And this movie, I think, it suffers a lot from looking back 15, 20 years later. 20, 25 years later.
Yeah.
In that, I'm sure at the time, like, this movie coming out, having the central structure that is, having a movie star like Brendan Fraser play a gay man.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure that was, in some sense, groundbreaking at the time. But looking back on it now, this whole thing just kind of feels kind of gross.
This movie. It doesn't feel quite as cringe as, like, White Man's Burden, as we've covered in Travolting season 1 of this show.
Yeah.
But it feels like, because White Man's Burden is, like, trying to be woke, but self-destructive in its own fake wokeness. It's old white person woke.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, what if white people treated like black people? What if black people treated like white people?
This is a movie.
This is just misguided.
This is a movie made from a straight perspective.
Yeah.
About straight people learning that it's okay to be gay and love gay people. And that is the problem with this movie.
Yeah.
Is it's told from that perspective. Her arc in this movie is going from wanting to abort her gay child to realizing I can still have a gay child and love them.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay.
It takes you a whole hour and 30-minute movie to figure that out? Like, really?
And, like, yeah, it's just...
Well, and the places that they take to get there are so phony and false.
Yes.
Because I'm trying to think of where I put the note down of, like, when she decides to keep the child, and it really is just like a switch flip. Like, unless if you can... I mean, there was one scene where she was pushed down and hurt, and they thought maybe the baby was hurt. And that could be thought of as, like, a way of, like, oh, maybe this is where she decides that she wants to keep her baby, but... Otherwise, I can't think of a proper moment in the film where there's like a conversation had where her mind changes. Like,
because this movie conflates like gay, like finding out that your child is going to be born gay, with finding your child is going to be born without legs or with Down syndrome.
Well, I was gonna say the exact same thing of like if you change the wording of the script from gay to like. Well, and it's sad to say that, they use the word, is it, they use the R word in this movie. I mean, it's the 90s where different time, I suppose. But like if they knew your child was going to be born with Down syndrome. Yeah. Like if you just change the words in the script to that, it's treated the exact same manner that gay is a deformity that you're born with. Yeah.
And like,
I'm laughing because I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah. This whole movie is just very uncomfortable.
It is very uncomfortable.
And that's, when this thing started, I actually didn't know what this was about when I pressed play.
I didn't either. I did not either.
And for the first, I would say 5 to 10 minutes, I was kind of into it. I think the beginning, it's kind of well shot at the beginning. But as the time, it devolves into standard coverage as it goes along.
It really does.
But there's some nice photography in the opening sequence.
But you're right, it really does.
That I was randomly drawn in and was like, oh, this is a Showtime movie and it's an adaptation of a play. And hang me from the rafters, but a lot of the stuff that I like in movies is stuff that comes out in like film plays. I know there's a lot of people who don't like plays that are turned into movies because they can feel like plays.
Yeah, I'm one of them.
Yeah, where people are just like delivering monologues in the same location for 90 minutes.
Yeah.
A lot of that stuff is usually what I'm into in movies. I like long monologues, discussions about existentialism.
I'll respect your opinion on that. I stand with the group that doesn't like that.
Yeah. And like generally, and I was like, oh, maybe this is going to be a movie that I like. It's about a Jewish family. Fraser, doesn't really reckon with his Judaism a lot.
And well, there's no conversations about that in this movie, though.
Yes.
The thing about for plays for me, it's like, like we watched Passion of Darkly Noon, which wasn't a play, but it had a lot of play vibes to it. I think we talked about this in the episode, where it took place mostly around one location, predominantly dialogue driven, but it still had like, I mean, of course, the last third of the movie takes a wide cinematic turn and no longer feels play at all. But the first 2/3, which is very play-like, didn't shut me down from it. Yeah. Because it still had like interesting questions to talk about and interesting motifs within the story. This has one motif that is not interesting from the start, doesn't ever get interesting. Yeah. And as a matter of fact, it kind of makes you feel pretty uncomfortable throughout it. Yeah. So its playwright aspect of this did not sell me in any shape or form in this film.
Because like this movie, like the title Twilight of the Golds, it's the Gold family. Yeah. And you think like the pitch seems to be like, okay, there's a gay son in a traditional Jewish family. Yeah. And they're all played by non-Jews. Yeah. But and I was like, oh well, there's a pitch here. There's an idea here about a play about a family falling apart in their twilight. Yeah. And it's not about that.
Well, that's where I think the play differs a little bit. Yeah. So brief overview, just so I can make that point, is like the sister Suzanne, we start with the movie where it follows throughout her life. Yeah. Their childhood with Brendan Fraser's voiceover for it. How they grow up as kids, how they end up, how Suzanne goes to medical school, and then she drops out. The family's disappointed. She marries a doctor who's a scientist, and then is living happily ever after. Whereas Fraser is like the artist of the family. Yeah. They don't use the words like gay for a while. Yeah. They just use the word like he's sort of different. He's outside. This is kind of where I think your motive comes in of like this movie could actually be something interesting. Yeah. And then we very quickly, then it's like, oh, Suzanne's pregnant. And then there's an announcement made at a dinner thing, and that's where we get a lot more sprinkling threads. That was a good scene, the dinner scene at the very beginning.
You know what I like? The first 5 minutes of this movie.
Right. Well, the dinner scene, it's like, again, they'd never say, oh, well, that's David, Brendan Fraser. He's gay. They'd be like, oh, David, so like, whoa, well, I don't think you'd like it. There won't be enough boys there or whatever. Well, it's like dropping subtle hints like that.
They reveal that Fraser is gay with the line where, what's her name? Suzanne, played by Jennifer Beals, who's actually very good in this. I think she's good.
Okay.
I don't think the character's good, but I think she's good.
Maybe that's.
She's like, I brought my husband Rob, and then Fraser's like, I would have brought Steven, but he wasn't invited.
Yes.
And that's how they reveal. I think that's like an interesting way to do it.
It is.
They set up a good dynamic in this opening scene. Yep. I really like the opening of the movie, how it's all done in like home video. Yeah. Flash, like as it shows like the childhood, and then it transitions into basically
their adult
film.
Life. Yeah.
For the bulk of the movie.
Yeah.
I always like when home video is used in a movie.
It can get cliche though.
It can get cliche, but I think if it's used well. Like Stuart, we recently saw The Fabelmans together. Mm-hmm. I think the single most effective scene in that movie, spoilers for The Fabelmans, if you haven't seen it, is when
I almost wrote down on my notes, how long are we going to talk before we bring up The Fabelmans?
Yeah. I think the most effective scene in The Fabelmans is when the family, which is also a movie about a Jewish family falling apart. Yeah. When the family moves to North California, finally, like they've made their because they start in New Jersey,
and they're going into their house for the first time.
Yeah, they make the full trek across the country. The family's fallen apart by the time they reach California.
Because this is when the spoiler alert divorce is revealed.
Yeah,
right before that,
and it shows them all entering the house, and Paul Dano's leading the kids, and Spielberg's using the camera. It's all done from the perspective of the camera. There's no dialogue because you just hear the crackle of the film. Mm-hmm. And you hear John Williams' very minimalistic score. Yeah. And it's just Spielberg running in, and you see like Paul Dano trying to be all excited with his kids, and the kids getting all excited. But slowly but surely it takes a more somber tone as you see Michelle Williams just like standing in the doorway, unable to accept this.
Not able to go inside.
And the kids and Paul Dano start like kind of getting upset. Paul Dano's like desperately trying to give her joy and bring her into the house, but she's refusing. This is all done with no dialogue.
Should we just talk about the Fablemans?
All through a single home video
it's
shot.
It's one shot, yeah.
And I think it's so effective. It's the most effective sequence in that movie.
Yeah.
And this movie does a little bit of that, but not nearly enough.
No.
It does at the beginning, it does at the end, and I like those bits, and I don't like anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I thought when I first saw it, like I did like the sort of the expositional intro of it, but it didn't like give any lasting effects. And when it brought it back up at the end of the movie, it didn't spark anything.
Here's
for
the
me.
thing. I liked the beginning. I didn't care about the next 80 minutes of the movie.
Did you like the
ending? Very emotional. I found it very effective.
Really?
Like literally the last 3 minutes of the movie, I was like, "Oh, this is nice."
I guess it's hard for me when I knew how the play really ended, though.
Yeah.
So to tag really quickly. So
let's quickly just
go through the plot.
Thing.
Let's go through the plot.
Because we can do this in less than 5 minutes.
It's sad, but
we can cover this plot. This is not a movie where we're going to have a lot to say about
the voiceover is what really bugs me out of the home video.
Yeah. Where he's like, yeah, and I was like, oh, Brendan, what are we doing, buddy?
Yeah.
What's going on, man? You seem pretty locked in the last movie.
First off, directed by Ross Kagan Marks. Hasn't really done much.
A fake name. A guy who does not exist.
Yeah, does not exist. Ross Kagan Marks hasn't done a single...
Ross Kagan Marks is actually just an algorithm.
The last thing he'd ever done was he just recently released
Walking with Herb.
Walking with Herb.
we did the Herb cast.
With George Lopez.
Can we do the Herb cast?
No.
What if we did...
And he has 7 upcoming projects, supposedly.
One of them called Foul.
I'll believe
I'll
believe it when I see it. So begin with a bar mitzvah flashback. It's David's bar mitzvah. And this is the home video that you're describing, Jeff. And we get Brendan Fraser's voiceover where he's talking about his family, focusing more on the upbringing of him and his sister and how they are each turning out.
Yeah.
And he's the artist of the family. The sister's the med school dropout who married a doctor.
Yeah. And she's pregnant.
Right. We get to modern day, and the first thing we see is Suzanne, played by Jennifer Beals, walking out of a hospital with the voiceover, "You're pregnant. Congratulations," or whatever.
She goes to her family's dinner.
Yeah, there's a family get-together for their 3-year anniversary of her and her husband, Rob. Rob, played by...
John Tenney.
Yeah, John Tenney. My favorite part about this movie. I thought John Tenney's performance was actually really good.
He's good.
I thought he was better than Fraser, personally.
Fraser is...
This is not Fraser's best.
There's a few scenes where he's good. But for the most part, he seems kind of lost in the material.
I have one scene that I actually kind of enjoyed.
Is it him and Faye Dunaway in the garage?
No. That's actually one of the reasons why I thought his performance wasn't good. It was because I tried really hard to get into that performance. Couldn't.
He's lost in the material.
My favorite performance is when he goes back to the auditorium and hugs Steve and cries.
Good move. Good scene.
It's 5 seconds long.
Yeah.
All he does is he goes in, tells Steve she's not going to keep it, and hugs him and cries.
But anyway, so they're at this dinner. I'm just going to plow through this.
Fraser
Suzanne reveals she's pregnant.
We got to talk about, first off, because then we see Brendan Fraser.
Oh, yeah.
We got to talk about
the hair.
The hair. Cue the music. Welcome to the hair ranking. This is going to go number 2 above the scalp, below Mrs. Winterbourne.
Whoa.
It's a floof. It is a long floof. And next week, folks, when we talk about Still Breathing, you're going to notice something. You're going to notice something very interesting, which I won't tell you until next week.
You're going to make it number 1, aren't you?
We'll get to it later.
Yeah, I got thoughts about that movie.
Okay, so yeah, it's Suzanne's 3-year anniversary with her husband. That's when I wrote down the quote, "Steve sends his regards, but he wasn't invited," which is David's boyfriend, the first indication that David's gay. I wrote down, okay, they're hitting the quote, "David's gay," bit, unquote, a little bit hard here, which is like the first inkling of like what this movie's downfall is going to be. Quote, "My favorite legally recognized couple."
Yes.
I liked that. That was good. That's a good line. there's this. What was this whole bit with Wagner's ring cycle?
Well, God help me. Fraser is trying to like he's like an opera director, and he's trying
to be.
Yeah, and he's putting together a play version of Wagner's Ring Cycle,
which is evidently an 8-hour,
but a modernized version that's going to be 6 hours.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that just happens.
But like, here's my biggest beef with that whole bit. I'm cool with the whole idea of like you have your current spine plot thread with your protagonist and A plot right here. On the underside, you have like this little thing that's happening in the background that you're not sure how it's quite connecting, but there's some interconnecting bits. Does that make you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like my only example, it's like I don't know, like a fucking you're watching like the A plot, and then every like 10 minutes it cuts to a tree growing in the woods.
Yeah.
You don't know how the tree is going to be connected, and at the very end,
you find out.
Yeah, you find out. That doesn't really ever happen in this movie. And so I was a little lost with that whole bit, and it bumped me a few times.
Yeah,
it's Dave's inhabitants.
Yeah.
It's why we get Dave in the movie.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if we didn't have that to cut to, the only place where we would see Dave is when he's talking to Suzanne about being gay.
Yes. Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, that's
flip
all
the page.
That's all I got. The parents are played by Gary Marshall and Faye Dunaway,
who are pretty good.
Yeah, they're fine.
Yeah,
neither of them are Jewish, which presents issues.
You're right.
Gary Marshall, the director of The Princess Diaries, amongst many other things.
Interesting. It's at this dinner table.
That was perhaps a little rude of me to only describe Gary Marshall as the director of The Princess Diaries. A very successful director in his own right. Good actor.
Playing a Jewish father.
Yeah, odd, just strange in this movie.
So Suzanne eventually reveals that, hey, I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, great, lovely.
Rob, her husband,
he is a doctor, but he's mostly a scientist.
They're doing genome testing.
They're working on the Human Genome Project.
Yes.
Which is
the thing for this movie to just bring up.
Yeah. He's working for the Human Genome Project, which evidently can track all the things that a child's going to be born with.
Yeah, like you inject into the uterus, and it's like, all right, your baby will be
6'1".
6'1".
He's gonna be. It's gonna.
He will have a short pinky.
Right.
It seemingly knows everything. It's
yeah.
Like, he will be the next president of the United States. Whoa.
Right. Yeah. So we cut to Rob at his lab celebrating. Yeah. And he's approached by his boss,
who tells him, "Hey, bring your wife.
Bring your wife." And it's like, self-marketing much?
Yeah.
It's like, well, if you don't, it's like, how can we trust the public to believe in our project if we can't believe in our own project? So you should bring your wife in to test the baby. A little bit invasive, but Rob goes with it. Meanwhile, we cut to where Suzanne works. She works at a retail store for clothing.
Yeah.
And who's one of her assistants, Jeff?
You won't believe it or not. You won't fucking believe it.
It's Rosie
You won't believe it, guys. You won't fucking believe it. It's Rosie O'Donnell. She's in this movie. It's great.
O'Donnell.
She's got a lot of things to... she really has like 4 scenes maybe. She's got 4 scenes maybe. She pops up. She says a couple of funny things. Then she disappears for the rest of the movie. Isn't that right?
That's right.
That's right, folks. It's me. It's Rosie O'Donnell in the movie.
So then we cut to...
Why is Rosie O'Donnell in this movie?
I don't know. I really don't know. In the role that she's in, maybe she had more scenes. I don't fucking know.
She literally pops up and is like, "You're getting so big, you're pregnant, you're gonna need a bigger dress," and then she's like gone. It's like her role in this movie.
We get one quick scene at Rob's parents' house, and his parents are like Orthodox Jews.
His dad literally looks like one of the characters from A Serious Man.
Yeah. And so they're like, they want their child to be raised Orthodox, and she's like, oh, well, we want the child to, choose for themselves. Like, that's fucking stupid. He's a little cartoonish villain.
Yeah.
And then they decide they're gonna actually test their child.
Yeah.
And so they go into the doctor's office. They do the needle injection in the uterus, and they get a sample. Blah 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 blah.
And Rob comes back and he's like, we got the results. She's like, oh my God. Is he okay? Is he going to be born? Is he deformed? No legs? No, physically he's fine. Oh my God.
What's going to happen? What's up? He's going to be like David.
Yeah. And it's like apparently the worst thing in the world to learn that your child's going to be gay.
Yeah.
They're like batten down the hatches.
They like weep for days and can't get out of bed.
And it's like
it's so depressing.
For the time, I can understand like it being a shock and being stressful to learn that.
Right.
What I cannot understand is the immediate where they're like, do you want to get rid of it? It's like, what? No.
That's immediately what they do is they talk about like what they're going to do.
They talk immediate talk about abortion.
And then this is an actual quote in the movie, guys. I'm not lying. I wrote it down. Suzanne talks about getting an abortion. They're in bed talking about all this. And she says, quote, I wish it were deformed.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow. And she clarifies in the screenplay, she clarifies of like that came out wrong. Like, I don't mean in the sense, but blah, blah, blah. But it's like being gay is much more complicated.
Yeah.
It's like if it had Down syndrome, like that's one thing, you know? Like, you know what to do when your child is going to be born with Down syndrome.
Yeah.
But you don't know what to do when your child's going to be born gay.
Yeah.
Is what the point that I think the scene is trying to make.
Yeah. It's like, even if you do change the context of this movie to Down syndrome or autism or even a physical deformity, it's still not a good pitch for a movie.
No,
it's not like it's not, I have disabled friends. It's not like I'm sure they would not want to watch a movie where it's like, yeah, if you knew you were going to be born like this, we would have just gotten rid of you. Like, that's not good.
Eugenics much?
Yeah. No.
Well, and that was the whole thing about, like, they make this point a tad bit with, like, their Human Genome Project, but, like, maybe this is something we shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
Like, we shouldn't be playing God. And it's one of those things, it gets into, like, a eugenics, like, a modification conversation, which I think this is not an interesting conversation, what this movie's trying to make.
Yeah.
It's not interesting. But what would be interesting is we're already in this fake world where they can detect things like being gay.
Yeah.
Not interesting. What would be interesting is they live in a fake world where not only you can detect being gay, but if you wanted to, you can modify the child to not be gay.
Can essentially, it's like a movie where you can create a child.
Right, which is, we already have that. It's called Gattaca.
Yeah.
And so, but like, you know, the human like modification question, that's a more interesting question because you don't have to square with the fact of whether having a gay child is bad or good.
Yeah.
You don't have to square with that.
That's a relevant topic for a movie.
Right. You don't have to square whether it's good or bad to be born gay because, like, it's fine.
Yeah.
But what would be interesting is if you could change your child to...
Is that right?
Is that right or wrong?
And
that's a more interesting question.
Because the idea, even if you take away, like, the whole, like, get rid of it question of this movie, the idea of, well, maybe we shouldn't be detecting... I'm like, there's nothing wrong with, like, testing to figure out if your child's going to be born with any sin, it helps you prepare for it.
Right.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's not a bad thing to know.
It's not, that part's not interesting.
Yeah.
What would be interesting is like, I mean, and it's not interesting to decide like what are you going to do with those facts because it's like you said, the answer is very easy. It'd be much more interesting if like we have this technology at hand that can allow you to change that. What do you want to do? Because here's pitching this.
Yes.
Two gay parents going through a surrogacy or something like that. They do the same test, and they figure out their child's going to be gay.
Yeah.
And we live in a world where the technology can change that. And both gay parents went through horrific prejudices in their upbringing.
And they're like, should we make our child be straight?
Right.
That's at least a concept.
That's a concept.
Yeah.
Right. So, not interesting.
Yes. I think that's all we can say.
Yeah. Well, offensive, too.
Yeah.
I think we can say that, too.
Because we can continue to talk about the plot, but it's just more of this.
Yeah, that's all this movie is.
Yeah. It's like 50 minutes of her trying to decide if she's going to keep the child or not. Fraser figuring out about this and, like, going into conflict with her.
Because
he's like, getting rid of this child is like getting rid of me.
Well, that's the whole, I think that's something we can address with this movie.
Yeah.
So like with that, besides the movie being about that question of whether we should keep the child or not, there's also the part in hand of where we're not going to tell David. That was another thing. There's like, we're not going to tell David about this whole thing. And then the mom lasts 1 hour and tells David.
Yeah.
And immediately, it becomes a conversation about victimizing David. Of like, oh, well, if you guys were able to know about this, what would you have done?
Yeah.
And the mom's like, oh, like, I don't, it was a different time back then, blah, blah, blah. The dad straight up says, I would have fucking gotten rid of you.
Yeah, he's like, if I could, you're sick, you're diseased, and if I had a cure for you, I'd cure you.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God.
Wow.
Stuart, I'm going to say something a little controversial right now.
Yeah.
I just, a few days ago, I got out of work early, and I watched the motion picture X-Men: The Last Stand. A movie that is not extremely well received.
Correct.
Which also essentially has the plot line of, if you could cure a gay person, would you?
Right.
Because, it's all about curing mutants, and in the original X-Men trilogy, directed by He Who Must Not Be Named, the mutants are a stand-in for LGBTQ.
And
that movie, not like extremely cognizant or smart in its ideas,
but it's
better than this.
Because
at least
you have like characters in that movie who can, in some reality, see their abilities as a deformity, like Rogue, like Angel.
And, like, I'll say that movie, like I said, does a very poor job with that plot line.
Right.
It does a better job than this.
Yes.
And I wanted to bring that up because it kind of threw me for a loop when that happened.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a whole thing with David about feeling victimized and how he's totally like against like Suzanne getting an abortion about it, and but Suzanne decides she's going to get an abortion, but then she changes her mind.
Yeah. And her husband Rob leaves her.
Yeah. When did that fucking happen?
Yeah, it happens off screen. He leaves her because she's keeping the child. And then she and the parents reconnect with David at his opera.
There was one good scene with Rob and Suzanne that I actually did like, and that's a shower scene.
Yeah, good scene.
Because so Rob is in the shower, and like throughout this is at the point of the movie where like they've known their child's going to be gay, and they're still like figuring out like whether they're going to keep it or not. And the biggest thing that Rob's doing, and you can kind of sympathize with this a little bit, is he's totally putting this in Suzanne's ballpark. It's like, I support you, whatever you want to do. And it's like, that's not an answer. I want to know what you want to do. And they have this argument in the shower, and eventually he just like rips off the band and says, I don't want to keep it.
Yeah.
It says, I don't want this child.
Yeah, I wish we had accomplished that 30 minutes earlier, so this movie could have been 60 minutes long, and I could have gone through quicker.
Right. But it is a good scene.
Yeah, it's a fine scene.
Yeah. Just in the sheer sense of writing. Then there's a little bit where Steven starts to get closer to the family.
Yeah, which
plays
is
tennis with
that's
the dad.
what the movie should have been. That's like part of like
1,000%.
Like if you cut out the whole baby aspect, there is an idea in this movie, and neither
poor choice of words.
like,
cut out the whole baby aspect.
Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah,
All right. But yeah, I agree. Making it more about instead
about
of like
a traditional fam. I mean, it's a story that's been told a million.
Instead
and
of just
times.
like arguing about it, just see it for yourself that we're not sick and diseased people, and that we're just happy. Yeah, which is what Steve is doing with the family.
It's I guess the story of the one son who doesn't fit in with the family has been told a million and a half times. Better than the movie we got would have been.
Yeah. But yeah, we end up at the opera, the family reconnecting, all that stuff.
And then we get another Fraser narration to close us out.
Yeah, voiceover.
As he's like,
Rob
my
left,
family
Suzanne.
got back together. But he takes care of his son on the weekend. And I'm like, wait a second.
Rob left Suzanne, but he still takes care of his son on the weekends.
The son he wanted to get rid of.
Yes.
So why are these divorced? If he's helping with the kid.
If they showed it on screen, Jeff, maybe we would know.
But the end of this movie, it does lead way to like a minute of just like home video footage
of Suzanne with her child
playing with the child.
Playground.
With also the score of this movie is atrocious.
It's terrible.
It's like piano and guitar riffs. It's like Seinfeld-esque.
It's TV movie-esque.
It's terrible. This is a TV movie, I guess, but anyway, it's Showtime. But anyway, terrible. But the ending, I was like, okay, this is actually effective. Like, she's gone through this trouble, and now she has her child, and she's going to give them all the love in the world. I was like, okay, I can get with this scene.
You look up the IMDb trivia, and you look up the play on Wikipedia, and you find out that the play has Suzanne getting an abortion.
Yeah, she gets rid of the kid.
And David being permanently estranged from the family.
Yeah.
That's how the play ends. Which, in the play is not from the 50s, ladies and gentlemen. This is not a reimagining.
It's from 1993.
It's from 1993. So I have to, like, ask the question of, like, what were the playwrights' intentions?
The thing is, I've heard the play was actually good. The play at least has has a bleak ending and sees this whole thing as, like, a miserable story that's being told.
Right.
The movie tries to have an uplifting ending.
And maybe the play is just being more realistic.
The play is, like, about how miserable this whole thing is.
Yeah.
There's no humor. There's no uplifting nature to it.
Well, it's more accurate to the title.
Yeah.
It's Twilight of the Golds. It's not Dawn of the Golds. It's not Sunrise of the Golds. Yeah. It's Twilight of the Golds. This movie is like the family's going to be fine.
Yeah. The family gets back together at the end of this. Like, yeah. If this movie had been as miserable as the play is, and, like, the pitch is, like, this family learns that their child's going to be gay, and, like, they struggle and they decide to get an abortion, and the gay son gets estranged from the family. That's not a pleasant movie to watch, but that could actually be a story that's told about prejudice and, like, hating something more than you love your family.
Yeah.
There's an idea.
Yeah.
By the movie changing the ending, it takes an already flawed concept and just makes it have no point.
Yeah.
That's the problem with the movie.
A lot of problems, but yeah. I don't think Fraser is that good in this movie.
Yeah, he's struggling with the material. He's not built for this.
And I don't know if it's like if he's not. I don't want to say he's trying too hard to act gay.
It's not even that. He's very serious in this.
Yeah.
And he just doesn't seem to be at a point in his career where he's up to snuff to kind of play the layers this character demands. Even if it's like a strangely written character.
Well, it's a very thinly written character. But this is a character that needs an actor
who can bring layers.
Can bring layers to it.
Yeah.
And I think I agree with what you're saying, Jeff.
This character needs layers to work.
I think as good as Fraser is, he can't, like, resurrect a dead character. Like, a lot of his movies that we love and adore that he's done so far are well-written characters.
And they're written for Fraser.
And they're written for him. This is a movie that needed a good actor to, like, bring to life. And Fraser's just not up to that par yet. Mm-hmm. Which I can't, now as we say it, put it in that phrasing, I can't necessarily blame him. But still, it's like...
he's drowning in this movie.
Yeah.
It's not, like, I applaud him for taking the initiative to try and, like, do stuff outside of his comfort zone at this point in his career.
Paper, I can see this role being appealing to him to try out. Yeah. Fraser's at the stage now where he wants to take risks.
Yeah, he wants to do serious stuff. He wants to do dramas. He wants to do plays.
Yeah.
And, like, this fits into that same, you know,
like Mrs. Winterbourne was, like, his idea. He can take on the role of, like, twins and play different versions. He's looking to
challenge himself. He's like, oh, I can play, you know, it's terrible, and this is just a sign of the times. Like, in the 90s, like, the idea of, oh, I can play a gay person.
Yeah.
That's like, oh, that's an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
As an actor. Which is, you know, rough to think about now, but at the time, that was probably the mindset. It's like, oh, that's an interesting challenge for me.
Yeah.
And he's not up to the challenge yet.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
Any post-text?
This movie airs on Showtime.
Yeah. Great.
I watched. Oh, you know what we do have to talk about.
What do we have to talk
about? There's only one way to watch this movie, Stuart. How do we watch it? Folks, have you ever heard of Freevee?
I'm sure they have.
Okay.
I hope they have.
It's a video streaming service. In our instance, it was available through Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
Called Freevee. You can watch a movie
for free.
It's for free, but you have to watch ads at intermittent parts of it, like you're watching on TV.
Yeah.
Freevee TV.
Yeah.
Folks, when I tell you, Freevee's my new favorite streaming service. like Disney Plus, more like Disney minus. Get it out of here. Netflix, no. How about fuck off?
Fuck off.
Amazon Prime, or like Amazon Lame. I don't know. Get them out of here. All right, Freebie, folks. So I start watching this movie. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, we're watching it. We're getting through these scenes. Let's see what's going on here. And then, folks, I gotta just quickly scroll up because I did write down the shit that I experienced watching this movie.
Yeah.
Oh, first and foremost thing, it was like a jump scare.
Yeah.
Stop kicking me.
Sorry.
I was watching this movie, and I was like, all right, I can get with this. And then out of nowhere, there's no like, it doesn't cut to black. There's no indication you're about to get a commercial break. The characters are just walking, and it cuts. And you're like, oh, next scene. Nintendo Switch logo comes up. I'm just like, ah! A Pokemon jumps out at the screen. It's like, Pokemon Scarlet! Pokemon Scarlet! And I'm like, oh, God. It's like, check out the region! See all these Pokemon right across the screen. I was like, what is going on? It turns out it's a commercial for Pokemon Scarlet, Pokemon Violet or something. I don't know. Oh I lost track when they were still the primary colors.
Oh, my God.
All right. But I'm like, okay, so that's just what this is going to be like.
Yeah.
We get to one of the more dramatic scenes of the movie where Suzanne is sitting there. And, you know, she's just had a fight with her husband. And she's sitting on the left side of frame.
Yeah.
And she's looking to the right. The scene's about to end. It cuts. Immediately, Idris Elba on the right side of the frame looking left. It looks like a match shot of what we just saw with Suzanne. And I was like, and like this music going, I'm like, oh, here we fucking go. Let's fucking go. I was like, this movie took a turn. I'm here for it.
Oh my God.
I was like expecting Suzanne to turn out. Idris Elba's in the room with her. He's like, all right, we're going to blow up the Statue of Liberty, aren't we? Oh my God. And that's like Idris Elba on a mount. It was the mount between us.
Yeah.
With him and Kate Winslet like walking across a mountain or something. I don't know. But it looked pretty badass. And I was like, all right, Twilight of the Golds. Let's fucking go. Here we go, guys.
What's your mic doing?
It's flipping out.
Okay.
So that happened. I'm like, Freevee is the best streaming service I've ever experienced. I've never felt such delight. Like when that happened. I was like, let's fucking go.
It's very interesting that like you can find that pleasure in like something so small, like ads in a very boring movie.
Yes. Next
I
one,
wish I could do that.
Next one, I got Travolta. I got Travolta ads. There's like a whole hairspray featurette. 90 seconds of hairspray.
I got a...
It's like, my welcome to the 60s. Welcome to the 60s. And Travolta's just like dancing on the screen. He's like, it's me, a Christmas I am. You know? And I was like, this thing fucking gets me, man. Freebie gets me.
Did you get a Transformers ad?
Oh, the last one I got was Transformers Revenge of the Fallen.
Which, why? Why these older movies?
I could not fucking tell you. But I got a Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, and I was like, Sir Shia LaBeouf, it's not my war. I fear it soon will be.
Well, like, who's paying for these ads? I have to know.
Megatron. Megatron.
To advertise for Transformers Revenge of the Fallen, the second installment.
Folks, when I tell you, I truly enjoyed the Freebie ads more than I enjoyed this movie. And I've been wanting to talk about this for the past few hours since I watched this movie. I was so delighted by Freebie.
That's great.
Consider me a stan for Freebie. If I ever go on Prime and it's like, do you want to pay $2 to rent this or do you want to watch it with Freebie? I'm going to be like, we're doing Freebie, folks. We're going to find out what's going on.
The ads are payment enough.
The ads are a gift.
You'll pay for the ads.
I will pay for the ads.
Do you want to watch this with no ads for $2 or Freebie for $5?
I'll pay the $5 for Freebie.
Paying the $5. That's fucking brilliant.
Oh my God, it was so funny. It was so entertaining.
Yeah.
You never knew what was coming around the corner.
No.
And you like I said, there's no warning when it's about to happen.
No, not at all.
So you just never know. Like
the ads are not placed well.
The anticipation I sat through this movie was not about what was going to happen between these characters. The anticipation I was having was, all right, what crazy cut to commercial are we about to get?
I love that. One of the things that I love is watching a show written and produced for cable, put on streaming services.
Yes.
That have those like organic commercial breaks.
Yeah.
where they just cut to black.
Yeah.
And then you come back to the show.
And then the commercial breaks happen in the middle of some other scene.
Right. And I'm just like, what the fuck
is happening?
Hulu's like very much like the culprit of this one, because they do have like cable network shows. Yeah. And if you only have Hulu with ads, then they don't place the ads in the organic commercial breaks.
Yeah.
Which I guess it's like that would take so much time to do.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, as opposed to just randomly populating ads.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can't argue it, but it's still like, come on.
I'll tell you, just simply, whoever picks the freebie spots, hire that guy.
Because
he knows what's going. He knows what to do.
He knows.
He knows what's going on.
Yeah.
All right. I just had to talk about freebie for a little bit.
You talked about it for 10 minutes.
Yeah, but I do think that's all I have. That's
right.
all the post text that this movie deserves and or gets.
Don't watch this movie.
Yeah, there's no reason.
There's no reason to watch this movie.
We watch this movie. You guys do not have to.
Yeah.
I mean, if you already watch it for this podcast, like, thank you.
Thank you. Good for you.
I hope you enjoyed the Freevee commercials, because I know you watched it on Freevee.
A movie that I would say you should watch. You don't have to, but you should. Is
Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen.
I was going to say our upcoming next episode, Still Breathing.
Yes.
Which we'll release next
Friday. Which we will have a rambunctious conversation about.
Okay. We're gonna record it after this,
yes.
so I'm in for a treat, I suppose.
All right, folks.
All right.
That's all I got.
Sweet. You want to take us out, Jeff?
All right, folks. Well, thank you for listening to this episode on the Twilight Golds. Make sure to tune in next week for an episode on Still Breathing. As always, please remember to rate, review, subscribe, whatever platform you are listening on. As a reminder, we're all available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and YouTube. Pop into our Reddit, r/Travolting. Find us on Twitter or Instagram at TravoltingPod. TravoltingPodcast@gmail.com if you want to email us any funny shit. Find me on Twitter at Jeff W. Sweeney.
You can find me on Instagram at Stuart85.
And as always, special thanks to Rebecca Johnson for our graphic design and Michael Van Bodegum Smith for the theme music that is now taking you out. Have a great week, folks.
Bye.